a button and we'll just get started. Some people say what we say on Sundays doesn't always match what we do in the real world of Monday through Saturday. And like I said last Sunday, well, there is a little bit of truth to that. There is a fundamental disconnect between how things should be and how things often are in the real world. And last Sunday we said, well, what do you do when things don't go the way you planned them? And we answered that by saying that even in the real world, God's behind these things, and sometimes we just have to learn to wait. It's not church talk, it's a fact. Now today we're going to look at another place where with what we hear on Sundays doesn't always match what we do on Monday through Saturday. And that's called your money. And if you get nothing else today, if you sleep the rest of the message, take this home with you. If you don't manage your finances will manage you. If you don't learn to control them, they will eventually control you. Now, you heard the old phrase, up the creek without a paddle. In the real world today, it's more like going down the rapids without a paddle. You're in the rapids, you have no paddle, you're just being slammed up against one rock and another rock. You say, I don't have any control over this, and we've all felt that way because that's life. And we think, I'll just ride it out. I'll make it through these rapids and just get beat to death, and then things will slow down and it'll be okay. And then one day we realize that all of life is the rapids. There are very few calm spots on the river of life. It really is just one difficulty after another difficulty. Now, what do? Our prayer is, God, get me out of the rapids. And that's not going to happen. But God's answer is, I'll be happy to send you a paddle. What is that paddle when it comes to personal finances? That's the plan for today. Because God has a plan for the way we do our finances. And it involves trusting God. Excellent choice this morning, praise team. All about the trust that we have for God. I'm going to give you 5 areas that we need to learn to trust God a little bit more. Number 1, trust God for the courage to face your problem. We all have this incredible ability to pretend that there's no problem. I don't have a problem. The bills start coming in and you leave them on the table. You don't open them. If I don't see them, they don't exist. They're not real. A lot of us need to be honest about the fact that we do have financial problems. And we need the courage to face them. Sometimes we try to worry them away. And just this past year, CNN did a survey, said 71% of all Americans, money is a huge part of their stress. Same last year, Capital One surveyed, 77% of us worry about money. And it doesn't matter if you have a lot or if you have a little, you worry just as much for either way. We're going to listen to an advice from Solomon a couple times today. Here's one, but when I'll just start over. Enjoy prosperity while you can. But when hard times strike, realize that both come from God. That way you'll realize that nothing is certain in this life. You want real world honesty? There it is. The Bible's giving it to you. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have good times and bad times when it comes to our finances. Don't be surprised about it. It's just the way life works. If your life and your finances were perfect all the time, I guarantee you wouldn't be in church because you would never have learned to trust God. You would never have learned your need for God. And then there's another trap. and thinking that things are always going to be good when they're good. If you're in sales and you have a couple of good months, what do? I'm going to tell you exactly what you do. It's what I did back in the early 70s. I sold pre-need cemetery property. That's where you go into people long before they ever need it and convince them that they need it. And it's 100% commission. Awesome commission for the early 70s. But you don't sell, you don't have any money. Now, I made some good sales. I made a bunch of them, and I'm thinking, if this keeps up, I will make this much money over the next year. So what should I do? I should go buy a new car. And what do you think happened? Yeah, I didn't sell anything for the next 2 months. You know what you do at that point? You eat pork and beans out of a can, because that's all you can afford. You will have up times and you will have down times in your finances. And don't think I'm the only one who's going to do this. Nobody else understands. We've all been there. We've all had these up and down times. Probably the hardest part is the fact that we don't always have the answer. And so we think, if I really look at this, I am just going to be so depressed. I am just going to be so discouraged. And that's not true. God will give you the strength to get through this. Listen to Paul. I know how to get along with humble means, and I also know how to live in prosperity. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of being filled and going hungry, both of having abundance and suffering. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Whoa. I'm sure all of you are familiar with that last part. I can do all things through Christ. But did you realize that it's right in the middle of a section where he's talking about money? The money he had or the money he didn't have. Wherever you are, let's make a promise to get some help this year. From God, number one, because there are some incredible pieces of financial advice in your Bibles. It is a financial book from cover to cover almost. And then number two, from each other. We have men and women in this place who have a solid financial head, who maybe have been through it, know how to do it. You know, if you're having a problem, don't be afraid to ask. That's number one. Trust God for courage to just face the problem. Well, now, number two, I want you to trust God for wisdom to plan your spending. We already have a plan. It's Solomon again. The more you have, the more you spend, right up to the limits of your income. So what's the advantage of wealth except just to watch it run through your fingers? Accurate statistics, year after year. Average Americans spend about 120% of what they make. It's no wonder we have problems. We are outspending the income coming in. We need a plan. First part of the plan, we need to make some priorities. If you're like Hazel and me, we have about 10, 15 different projects going on that we all think we have to have. New commodes, a ceiling in the kitchen, lights at work when you turn the switch on, a bathroom remodel, put a shower in downstairs. Of course, a new computer and a new keyboard and a new guitar. We all have things that are important. I'm just saying you get together and dream a little bit and say, what is it we really want to do? Because we can't do all of this. No way. What is the highest priority? And then I want you to go to God and ask him what his thoughts are. And I'm going to do you one better. I'm going to go ahead and tell you what God's thoughts are. Here's God's opinion. First plant your fields, then build your barn. Now, most of us in here are not farmers. So for those of us who are not, let me paraphrase that verse. Drive that old clunker, drive that minivan first, and then buy your sports car. Okay? In the divine scheme of things, commodes probably have priority over guitars. I'm fairly sure about that. And we need to have a priority in our life. Now, once you know where you want your money to go, you need to find a way of getting it there. Solomon says the plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty. For a workable plan, you're going to have to write it down. And I know you think that's sounding a whole lot like that dirty little B word, budget. I don't know why people don't like budgets. But a plan has to start with an honest look at where you are, because chances are most of you have no idea where your money's going. You don't know how much you spent last month from eating out or buying groceries or even gas or Starbucks. For 3 or 4 of you, you might have thought, well, we bought our groceries for $400 last month, when the reality is you might have paid $1,000 or more. So you've got to see where your money's going. Now, third little piece of advice here, practice some good record keeping. Again, God's advice here. Be sure to know the condition of your flock. Now, I don't think any of us have any sheep in our backyards. If you do, you totally understand that already. So we definitely got to paraphrase this one a little bit. Here it is. Know what you have. Know what you've spent, know what you need, and how you do that is just simply keep good records. Figure out what works for you. Now, if you are a high-tech person, put it on the computer. Buy Quicken. It's what we use now here at the church. It's what Hazel and I have used for 50, 60 years. Put it on the computer. If you don't want to pay for it, the second best spreadsheet in the entire United States is absolutely free. Put it on an Excel spreadsheet. No, I'm not talking about Excel, but if you're high tech, put it there. Now, if you are a low tech, buy you one of these dollar composition books and write everything down. You know, the cool thing about it, this is going to give you a blessing to begin with, because you'll find out just how much God has blessed you when you put it down all in one place. Now, number 3, trust God to give you faith to give generously. In the Old Testament, the book of Leviticus says, 1/10 of what you produce belongs to the Lord. It must be set apart to Him as holy. And I don't know why that was written. I don't know why He picked 10%. It could have been 50, it could have been 90, it could have been 4.5%. But God said 10%. Now, frankly, to those of us who live in the 21st century, that sounds almost impossible. You bring home $500 and you say, what? God gets $50 of this? And it's like, can't afford to do that. And the truth is, it's our own poor management that has put us in this situation. Solomon said, honor the Lord by giving the first part of your income. Then He'll fill your barn with wheat and barley and overflow your wine vats with the finest wines. And the New Testament says it like this, even clearer, I think. Remember this, a farmer who plants only a few seeds will get a small crop. But the one who plants generously will get a generous crop. So you must decide in your heart how much to give. And don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure, because God loves a cheerful giver. And God will generously provide all you need. Then you'll always have everything you need and plenty left over to share with others. I do not pretend to understand what I'm going to say, but in some way it is a very factual biblical principle that our generosity to God determines in some way God's generosity to us. Now, I can't explain all of that. I can't even go into all the details of that, but I just see that over and over in just about every book in my Bible. Now, he doesn't need it. God doesn't even use money. He already owns everything, so what's the point? Well, Moses says this in the Old Testament. The purpose of tithing is to teach you always to put God first in your lives. That's what God is interested in. God's interested in your heart. And unfortunately, your heart is always with your finances. And if you think you can put God first in your life without Him being first in your finances, you're just fooling yourself. I think the ultimate question is, do we trust God enough to do that? Well, number 4, and it's getting actually a little harder. Trust God for discipline. Because I want you to do 2 things. Number 1, I want you to pay your bills off. And number 2, I want you to start putting money into your savings account. Again and again, Jesus says things like, just as the rich rule the poor, so the borrower is servant to the lender. Solomon actually said that. You should put that on your credit card, so when you're getting out there and you're about ready to buy something, just realize that I'm going to put myself as slave to the lender on this one. Might make a difference. This past week, actually about 3 days ago, I went to get the most up-to-date statistics I could find from reputable. I always try to go to a reputable internet site, you know. The average American person, individual, has about $7,200 in credit card debt. It comes from LendingTree. Now, according to Experian, which is a huge credit place, in the last year's figures, the average person, now I'm going to count mortgage and your car payment and some credit cards and all that stuff. And for some of you, it'll be far, far more. For some of you, it'll be far, far less. But the average last year was $106,000. Yeah, if 2 of you, is $212,000. Wow. In fact, we have about 50. Got a little bit more than 50 people here today. If the statistics hold up, and I don't really expect them to go this bad here because we're not the richest bunch of people in the world. But if we hit the statistics on just the average, we have over $5 million worth of debt in this little room. Whew. Isn't that just depressing? Doesn't that just lift your spirit and make you want to go home and shout hallelujah? Now, I suspect we're not that far in debt. I know I'm not that far in debt. But it is fair to say that Americans suffer with too much debt. Your family suffers with too much debt. Your kids get out of high school, they want a $300,000, $400,000 home, and it's tough to do that these days. If you've been in debt for a long time, you know there's no easy fix. It takes discipline, it takes patience. You won't do it in a month, you won't do it in a year. But if you stay with it, you will do it. Paul would say, pay all your debts except the debt of love to others. Now, one of the keys to not getting into debt is putting a little bit of money aside into like an emergency fund. That way you get into trouble, you take it out of your savings account, not out of your credit card. We know how to do that, but it's so hard. Solomon says, he who works with his land will have an abundant food, but he chases fantasies lack judgment. Do not answer this, but are you trying to fund your retirement by buying lottery tickets? Let me tell you, that's not going to work. You're not going to be able to retire on that. Here's a verse that needs to be taped on your refrigerator. When I see it again, there. Money that comes easily disappears quickly, but money that is gathered little by little will grow. You know what that means. You know the paraphrase, easy come, easy go. Just simply start small. Learn to give, learn to pay, learn to save. Here is a final suggestion, and it may be the hardest. Trust God for integrity to check your own heart. Those of you who have tried and failed doing a budget or are getting out of debt, you know it is more than just a matter of a checkbook, and it's more than a matter of a paycheck. It's an ultimate issue of your heart. Our heart and our possessions are tied together. I don't even know if you can separate them. It was Jesus who said, your heart will be where your treasure is. And our heart is going to be naturally drawn to the things we love in life. Maybe a good fancy restaurant or world travel, a car, or a new boat, new computer for sure, guitars, keyboards. That's where our heart's going to be. And we need to check our heart to see if those things are important to us. And all of that can be pretty uncomfortable. Most of us are not ready to admit that kind of truth. And ultimately, it becomes a matter of personal integrity, how you choose to deal with your finances. And that means it's going to ultimately be a matter of your trust in God. Again, God's got advice for the real world. It's not a Sunday-only kind of advice. It says, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, I'll never leave you, I'll never forsake you. Now, the next time you bring out a $20 bill, you look on the back side and it has a phrase that says, in God we trust. And that's ultimately a matter of integrity, because as you spend that $20 bill, God is trusting you to spend it wisely in the direction that He would like it to go. Would you stand as we share a final song this morning?
Dan, I still have guitars above toilets on my priority list. You can dig a hole in the ground. Toilets don't make